a meeting at 1.
I don't.
Okay, I'm going to.
I do not.
So are you using the CC manual or are you using the pathway?
Well, I signed up for the pathways, and this is part of the pathways, but I have not received it.
I just
So
like
you
the
are doing the pathways then?
Yes,
Okay, so
presentation.
let me go back.
Celery and
Yep.
carrots.
You have to go online.
Yeah.
You don't get a manual.
Okay.
So now no more manuals.
Julie and I will have to discuss that,
Discuss what?
that I have to go online to get my manual.
Who else
Oh,
is your
okay.
mentor?
Julie.
Me.
Okay, yeah, you gotta work with your pathways.
Hey,
Yeah, I haven't figured that out yet, but we did practice the icebreaker together.
People clap, you're supposed to clap with them.
Oh, okay. Who are we clapping for? The meeting started. Yay!
Steve is out of town, so I am standing in as president. So welcome to Toastmasters. We've got a small group today. So,
Yeah.
do we need looks like we need a grammarian for the,
Yeah, we do need a
is
grammarian.
that just volunteer?
Yeah, I just saw Mr. Trey's email. He bailed half an hour before the meeting.
But he doesn't have a role.
Yeah, I think we have everybody.
Yeah, he did have a role.
Speaker?
No, he had some sort of a role, I saw that.
I think he might have been the third evaluator that we didn't need
I
because we
think
didn't
so.
have a third speaker. So
Okay.
that
Well, it
works
looks
out.
like we're
We've got
good
it
to go. So I will have, I will turn the meeting over to our Toastmaster.
Yay, Kate.
Hello, very small group. So today's theme is gifts from the garden. So I was at a loss for choosing a theme. I'm really bad with themes. In the past few times I've had to pick one for table topics or a meeting. It's been right around a holiday, which is super convenient. So this actually made me think of it. So I of course Googled what's happening in May, and May is gifts from the garden month, which I thought was kind of funny because most food is not ready from your garden in May, but nevertheless. So I've actually been spending quite a bit of time gardening and repotting on my teeny tiny little balcony, which has become quite jungly, but it's very fun. And I also found that gardening can offer more than just delicious fruits and veggies. It can reduce stress and anxiety and even help you sleep better. So there's still half a month left. Go get your hands in some dirt and maybe you'll relax a little bit.
All right.
So if everybody wants to pass their books around if they need to, for anyone to evaluate their leadership roles if you're still on that track. And then I would like to invite our general evaluator, Jorge, up to come and introduce his evaluation team.
Right, evaluation. My evaluation team is limping today. Anybody wants to take the grammarian role?
I will.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you, Vivek.
Okay, so we do have a relatively light agenda today. And Vivek has just volunteered to become the evaluator for our meeting today. We're going to have a
grammarian, right?
very sharp and demanding awe and consultant.
Pass.
And Kathy will play the role of timer.
Yes.
So that's what we have in store today.
Announce their roles. Then I'll explain their roles.
Oh, okay. So let's start by Vivek. Could you please explain your role today?
Yes, what my role today would be to provide the word of the day, which is expeditious. It's an adjective which means on time. We all strive to be expeditious in our attendance to Toastmaster meetings.
Thank you.
And I would try to listen carefully and try to capture the suggested change or the correct way of saying a sentence, or if people are changing the direction midway by incompleting the sentence and then saying something else, and try to capture how many times the word of the day is used. And I'll provide my report at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Very good. So Pat Sultan, would you tell us a little bit about your role today?
A 1 and a 2 and a, well, you know what not to do. All the parts, the ahs, the ums, the so's, the likes, you knows, and other interesting phrases that you throw in while you're thinking of the next phrase to use, along with any double speak. So, you know.
Yeah, and.
Sort of.
Like.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Pat.
I am sure that no awe will go uncounted today. Kathy, would you please tell us a little bit about the timer rule?
Yes, our grammarian gave me, it's a gimme for timing, because it talks about timing, and that's what I'm doing, is making sure everybody's expeditious in their timing. We have 2 speakers. Our first speaker has a speaking time of 4 to 6 minutes, so the green light will go on at 4 minutes, yellow at 5 minutes, red at 6 minutes. Our second speaker is 10 to 15. Again, the green light will go on at the minimum time, yellow at the midpoint, and red at the maximum time. And each speaker has 30 seconds grace period in order to qualify for the awards. Table topics is 1 to 2 minutes with a 15-second grace period, but you have to speak for at least 1 minute. And evaluations are 2 to 3 minutes with a 30-second grace period. And we'll give a report at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Kathy. I am starting to wonder whether using Expedia is good or bad, because you don't want expeditious vacations. So, very good. So let's move on. And I will invite our Toastmaster.
All right, always an exciting day. We have Boston Carter giving her icebreaker today. So 4 to 6 minutes. The title is Minnesota, and she'll be telling us all about Minnesota culture through the seasons. So help me welcome Boston.
Hello, fellow Toastmasters. I shall expeditiously tell you of Minnesota culture through the seasons. I was raised in a small town up north called Grand Rapids, not Michigan. It's about 7,000 people, and it's very pristine and beautiful. There's no pollution. There's clear air. The water is clear. You can see all the way down to the bottom of the lakes. And we have what I like to call the blood-sucking vermin as the pests to go with that nature. We have mosquitoes, which many consider to be the state bird, wood ticks, and leeches. But we also have some game, such as deer, elk, moose, bear, waterfowl, and of course fish to go in our 10 to 15,000 lakes. Our greatest sport is fishing. It's what we're best known for. And every spring, we cross our fingers and look forward to opening fishing day, which is always the first Saturday in May. And if the ice is not off the lakes yet, we do this. So the summer comes next, and we play in the water quite a bit. So water skiing, tubing, swimming, snorkeling. I always liked as a kid to go out to the middle of the lake with the boat and dive off where it's deep, because there's a lot of weeds upshore, and that's where the little baby leeches live. And in the boat we always kept a box of salt, so that when we came out of the water we could remove the leeches if we had any, which happened a couple times a year. And then we spend our summer evenings staring at the water and the sunset. This is actually a shot of Kegma Lake where I grew up. We spent our evenings smacking mosquitoes and checking for wood ticks as we gazed at the sunset, listening to the loons. It's a duck-like looking waterfowl, but it has a very distinctive sound. Then we move into fall. And because of our forests of oak, maple, birch, and pine, we get these beautiful panoramic views of color that reflect off all the lakes. Then what we are most famous for, of course, is winter. The deep snow, 40 below weather, snowmobiles. When I was 13, I was given my snowmobile. All the kids had them. That's how we got around. I would zoom across the ice to my grandmother's house to steal from her abundantly supplied candy. And then I'd head out to the ski lodge to sneak into the swimming pool. When most people think of Minnesota, they imagine something like this guy, sitting over an open ice hole fishing. But typically, this only happens during fishing contests, such as this. And then the fish fry follows. It's a fun part of winter. Most people stake out a spot on the ice each winter for their fishing. And they do it in a house like this. When I was growing up, they looked like this. Plywood slapped on a stick frame with skids, hauling it out to the ice with a snowmobile. Cut your hole in the ice, throw in the wood stove, load it with beer, and hang out for the winter. But nowadays, ice houses look like this.
Oh, wow.
Put a plow on the front of your truck, you plow a road out to wherever your spot is. The ice is good and thick, about 30 inches due to that 40 below weather. So driving out there is common. Hauling the rig out, you stake up your spot. This thing has a kitchen, bathroom, bunks, it's an RV. And it's got holes in the floor with hard plastic covers that you can stand on. And invariably every year, somebody waits a little too long to get their house off the ice. And this happens. But no fear, spring is coming, and we know what to do. Toastmaster.
Can we have 1 minute for evaluations, please? I'm excited for my turn.
Don't know. Signing too many contracts.
Thank you. So keeping with our theme of gifts from the garden, I actually only recently started gardening. Previous to that, I would go out and buy a cute little plant from Home Depot and was basically signing its death warrant because it had a couple weeks before I would inevitably kill it. I strongly urge you, if you were not gifted with a green thumb, to start keeping cacti. They require very little maintenance. They can be your little spiky friend, and you'll feel slightly better because at least one plant has made it longer than 6 months on your windowsill. Strongly suggest. So our next speaker up is Randy Barber. So Randy is speaking from the Better Speaker series, and his speech is entitled Know Your Audience. The Better Speaker series is a set of presentations developed to improve the speaking skills of club members. The content of the presentations provides speaking techniques and facts that help all club members develop their communication skills. Knowing your audience is critical to successful communication. This is especially true when you're speaking out to outside organizations. And this presentation will address the importance of researching and understanding the people who will be listening to your presentation so you can address their specific needs. So Randy began doing presentations to organizations outside of Toastmasters about a year ago, and as part of this presentation, he will share some of his experience and offer tips that are useful for speeches for Toastmasters and outside organizations. It'll be 10 to 15 minutes. Please help me welcome Randy.
I don't know how flowery my prose will be, but I will do my best. As Kate noted, the Better Speakers series is intended to help inform members about what I would call more, I hate to use the word advanced, but I'm going to use that word, advanced presentation skills. Pathways and the legacy system of the Competent Communicator manuals gave us some rudimentary or basic skills. How do you prepare a speech? How do you deliver a speech? How do you get familiar with using visual aids? Like Boston was fantastic with that. First time I did that, not so good. But you're going to be a rock star when it comes to this. But things of that nature that help us just become more comfortable standing in front of an audience. When you take this outside of Toastmasters, the game gets ratcheted up just a little bit. And in some cases, a lot. If you think about professional speakers, if you're commanding $3,000 to hundreds of thousands of dollars for a speech or a presentation, the audience has certain expectations of what they're going to get out of that presentation. Craig Valentine tells a story about the first speech that he got paid for. Excuse me, it was to an organization in Michigan. And this was just after he had won the World Championship of Speaking. And he tells a story about how they contacted him and said, we're going to pay you $3,500 to come and deliver a speech for us. He came off the stage and said, I gave him a $150 speech.
Ooh.
One of the reasons he says that was true was he really didn't know that much about his audience. What are presentations really designed to do? And I'm going to ask you all this question. How many of you are salespeople? Every hand should be up. If you're speaking, you're selling. It's just a question of what you're selling. Presentation objectives are to fulfill the audience's goals. And what are those audience goals? You can break them down into 4 basic areas. We're here to inform, to inspire, to persuade, or to entertain. Boston's speech was all about informing us about who she is and where she grew up. Think about Steve's presentation last week that he did on Kangen water. It had, I think, 2 goals. One was to inform, and one was to persuade. If you've ever heard Ellen's presentation and speech about her journey to America, that's very inspirational. Those types of things are specific to the presentation the individual wants to give. And the question is, how do you take that and deliver it to an audience? First, you have to know who your audience is. And how do you find that out? There's lots of information on the internet about different organizations that you might present to. You can go to publications. Everybody, or thereabout, has a website these days. And on their websites is lots of information. I'm going to assume that Daisy Foundation has a lot of information about your organization on your website. If I'm going to come present to Daisy, that's the first place I'm going to go look to find out about your membership. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to contact people who are in that organization. If it's an event organizer or a meeting planner, great sources of information about how to find out what's on the minds of the people who you're going to present to. Because you get engaged as a speaker outside of this, or maybe inside your organization, for a couple of different reasons. And one of them, again, is to sell. Whether you're selling your idea to an organization, whether you're selling someone that you want to bring on board as a partner or as an affiliate, those are all types of sales. It's important to know what your audience is all about and what they're looking for. So what are some of the variables that audiences have? Age range, male to female, and these become very important when you think about the language that you use in your presentation. I'm going to relate a couple of stories that I had. The first time I went out and did a presentation, well, actually the first 2 times, one was to the Seattle Design Administrative Association, SDAA, which is a group of support people who work in technical organizations. The second one was to a Rotary group. Wildly different audiences. The first one had a common set of beliefs and ideas and backgrounds that and problems they were trying to solve. The second one, if you've ever presented to a Rotary group, wildly different professional backgrounds. They have a common interest, which is the service of other people and of what the organization, what that particular club has adopted as their particular focus. Some of them are trying to eradicate polio. Some of them are just trying to work on homelessness and hunger locally. But each one has its own little focus. The first 2 times I went outside of Toastmasters and presented, I did no research on my audience. As you can bet, there's a word for that, what I did. Suck. Very appropriate. I was telling Amy, on the back of this little clicker thing is a word called connect. Human beings don't have a connect button on them. And if you don't know your audience, it's very hard to connect to your audience. This is really, really important. It's also said this has political activities. There's a lot of organizations who will say 2 things you really don't want to talk about: politics and religion. Everything else is fair game. But unless you ask that question, you will never know that. And if you don't hear that, it's always good to assume that. Then you get down to this issue of environmental issues. We have such a great space to present in. I did a presentation to a Marysville Rotary group. Wanted to use a slide presentation. The first thing they did was turn the lights off.
Oh.
Which was fine for the slide presentation.
Right.
It sucked because I was trying to videotape this thing. You couldn't see me. I was this little shadow that danced across the street. It was kind of like this guy, you know? Not good for that. But it's good to know that. It's always good to go into a room and scope out what the layout's going to be. Professional presenters will tell you this. They say go to the 4 corners of every room that you present in and see what the sight lines are like. You can't do a sound check because you don't have the audio-visual stuff to take care of. But you want to know whether or not the people who are in that corner can see you, or the people in that corner. Or in many cases, it's the people up front that have more of an issue than the people in the back. There's also this issue about how people are seated. First presentation I did was an after-dinner speech. Round tables, lots of people with their backs to me. Could have been why this little connect button on the back would have been really important for me. It's okay to ask people to turn around and to face you when they do this. If you ever speak after either a lunch or a dinner presentation, it's always good to connect with the people who are the servers and ask them to please not be in the room when you're presenting, because it's such a distraction. Things that you just never know about. Temperature and outside factors. Most conference rooms are about 5 to 7 degrees colder than what I like them. Even in July, I will take a jacket into a conference simply because I get cold. If other people are too cold, other people are too hot, same type of issue. So how do you keep their attention? It's important to know the time of day. Again, if you're speaking after lunch or after a meal, it's a big deal. If you're in a conference room where there's concurrent activities going on, good to know this too, because sometimes that noise will bleed over. If you drone on and on and on, they may need a break. Just to be aware of this. Researching your audience in advance is really important as you begin to work outside of Toastmasters. If you have not presented outside of Toastmasters, I highly recommend it. It gives you a way different perspective on how to present, how to prepare, how to own the stage, how to deal with different inputs that you have. One of the things that I forgot to do, I was telling Kathy about this, I was going to tell you that if you had any questions as I go along, feel free to interject them. Now that I'm at the end, if you have any questions, feel free to interject them. But knowing these things are really important because it helps you stand up here confidently. One of the little secrets is audiences want presenters to succeed. So lest you think people are in the audience thinking, oh, that guy sucks. They're not thinking that. They want you to succeed. Do your homework, and your chances of succeeding go up measurably. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain. This is not part of the assignment for Q&A. I see the green lights on, so there's time.
There's time. Sometimes at the beginning of speeches, speakers will say, who in the audience can relate to blah, blah, blah? What kind of questions do you like to ask?
There is a technique that Craig Valentine, the 99 champion of world speaking, he's the first person I heard say this.
Mm-hmm.
He said, speak to one, talk to many. You-focused questions are that type of thing. So if I say, raise your hand if you're in sales. Like I did today. I said, raise your hand if you're in sales.
Uh-huh.
It's your type of language. The type of questions that you ask are really dependent upon two things, I think. One is, what are the problems that you're trying to solve? And maybe not solve, but trying to address as part of your presentation. And again, doing the research will help you find out what the issues of your audience are. The second thing is, not only are you trying to deal with potential issues that they are, but what are their interests? Or if you're relating a story to them, what are some of the things that you could ask them that would help them relate emotionally to the story? Those types of questions are really good questions to ask.
Thank you.
Jorge?
I believe, and I wanted to have your input, that coming into the audience, it is very important to warm up with a kind of an icebreaker, like a little joke or some comment. What do you think?
I'm not a big fan of starting with a joke. There's also a technique that both Darren LaCroix and Craig Valentine espouse, which is uncover humor in your presentation. Don't interject humor. If you find ways to do setups and then a punchline as part of what you're going to say, it helps people do that. And you can do that through your stories. When I present outside of Toastmasters, I generally start with a story. Sometimes I will start with a question to engage the audience, but you're absolutely right. Until you gain a certain level of trust with the audience, you do need to warm up to them and to engage them a little bit. I see I'm just about out of time, so Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you. Can we have 1 minute for evaluation?
Totally legit. Let's move this back. Maybe try to turn this on. Yeah, let's do that.
I don't know if any of the rules here work. I've tried every single time. I don't know if it's
If they work, we're changing the input, and that's about it.
I just don't want us to have that much control. All right, thank you. So next up is table topics. So thank you, Julie, for stepping in yesterday to take over that table topics master role. And we will look forward to your questions here.
Oh,
Thank you so much. Love your shirt. Very,
thank you very
festive.
We're on purpose. Almost everybody or everybody has a role. Who does not have a role? Hello, we haven't seen you for a while. How are you? Good, well, thank you.
Volunteer. I think you just
Come
volunteered.
on up.
Very subtle,
Okay, it's good to see you. Yes. When I was growing up, this is a lilac, and in Michigan lilacs are popular, and growing up lilacs were just one of the favorite flowers of my family, and so they always make my heart go, when I smell a lilac. My question to you is, tell us about something from your childhood related to a garden or fruit or anything that grows, something that means something to you.
The place where I come from in India, it is known for jackfruit. Like each and every other home, they'll have jackfruit tree. And it is also famous for cashew nuts, farming of cashew nuts. So whenever and that place is called Pandruti. It is in the southern part of India, in a state called Tamil Nadu. And from my place, they export cashew nuts all over the world. So during the season for the jackfruit, so we can when the season starts, when the fruit starts to ripe, we can smell the fruit, the ripe fruit all over the places. So the whole community or the whole place where we are here, we used to get that smell, and whenever we go out to any relation's home in other parts of the state, they used to ask, why don't you guys bring, why don't you guys just get us some fruit from your place?
Everyone else has a role, so I'm going to ask for volunteers. Awesome! Okay, let's see. Which one for you? Okay. This is
a picture of a Japanese Zen garden.
Oregon.
It's,
It's one in Oregon as well, like Portland.
oh, there are lots of them in Portland, yeah. So my question is, it doesn't really have plants. What makes it a garden?
Good afternoon, everyone. So the question is, I've been given a picture where there is a Japanese garden with some rocks situated in a particular formation, and there is a sand which has, I would say, design in a specific formation. I have been to a Japanese garden only once in my life. That's what I was talking about in Portland, Oregon. And the reason they call it a garden is like a garden is a place where people go to unwind themselves. So what Japanese, they are very, I would say, spiritual people, and it's not that you can call a place with plants only a garden. You can call a place with different things, like you can even have cactus, you can even have a place where you are sitting over there and trying to get out of this worldly tension, and then just sit over there, close your eyes, and just relax. And that's what I would call, like this place, if you go over there, there are small huts with, there would be water flowing around, so you can clearly connect with the nature. And that's where, like, I would say a garden comes into place, where you can connect with the nature.
That's lovely. Who else would like to volunteer for one of my fun questions? Amy, awesome. Okay. These are garden gnomes. Have you guys all seen garden gnomes?
Yes.
They're very controversial. Some people love gnomes, other people hate gnomes. So I would really like you to give us yes or no to gnomes. Thank you, Amy.
Julie. It's funny that you should ask because I happen to have an opinion about this. First of all, gardening is kind of my thing. I love gardens. I love gardening, flowers, vegetables, all sorts of things. It's very peaceful. The garden gnome in particular. Now, my family is from Norway, so Vikings are kind of our thing, but gnomes are also part of our heritage. So my family has a lot of mystical creatures that are passed down. And so I'm very picky about my garden gnomes. I want them to look like it's an old garden gnome of good quality and just not those fake plasticky things that you can find all over the place. And so I have no garden gnomes in my yard because I have not been able to find one that I really, really like, except for this one in Westport that was at a fair that was holding flowers that said, or a sign with flowers that said, "Don't touch my flowers." And it was probably 5 years ago that I saw that, and I didn't get it at the time. And I'm kicking myself ever since because I thought I could find it online, and you can't find good quality garden gnomes like that online. So, I am a big fan of the garden gnomes. If anybody knows where you can find some and they're not like $50, I would definitely appreciate you telling me. Because I feel like I need to have garden gnomes to make my garden a secret garden and more magical than it is right now.
So Amy's vote is yes to gnomes, but no to cheap gnomes. Cheap fast gnomes. Alrighty. Who would like to come up next? Pat, thank you. I would like to know, so I love what Vivek said about gardens are a place to connect to nature and relax and stuff. When I look at this French garden that is really sculptured and stuff,
Manicured, I would say.
doesn't exactly say relax to me. What does this tell you about the French culture?
Ah, the French. To me, this says, look, but do not touch. I am not a gardener. I tend to kill whatever I buy. When I get a household plant, I apologize to it before I even bring it up to the checkout. Look at it. Are you in good shape? Well, you just wait. So I'm a little bit jealous of the people who have the ability to create something like this. Also for the people who can afford to have something like this created, because frankly, those who create it are not the ones who can afford. Those are the gardeners versus the kings. This is not a place where I would sit. This would be a place I would walk through. And I would admire it, and I would tend to say, oh, but look, there's a leaf out of place. This would be stressful for me. Maybe that has something to do with the French. And maybe this has something to do with the strikes that are always going on, because there's a lack of satisfaction in their lives because they can't just relax. I know they're supposed to sip their teas on the Champs-Elysees and just relax. But then they step outside and they find something like this, and it freaks them out. So, no, this is not a garden that I would ever want to be.
It's the obsession with the children.
My brother owned a beautiful home in France for a number of years. He had this idea that it would be great to spend summers in France. But after a while, he sold it and he decided to write a book called France is for the French. All right.
Goodness.
Who would like to come up next? We still have room for one or two more, I think. Miss Kate. Now, I know that you work for the Daisy Foundation, which has Daisy in the title. If you were to create a foundation for something wild and crazy and fun, what gift from the garden would you name it after? What would it be?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as far as foundations go, if I were to create my own, I would say other than my current job, which is all about human compassion, I also have compassion for our little adorable furry friends. Specifically, I love dogs because I'm not allergic to them, but I love cats just as much. So I would maybe call it the Catnip Foundation, because catnip is a nice little garden plant that you can grow, and its entire dedication would not only be to finding these cats and housing them and getting them spayed and neutered so we don't have more stray cats and more problems, but it would also be towards finding a cure or treatment seriously for cat allergies, because I can't even pet one without going into an asthma attack. And I would love to, and I also have no self-control. So if I see a cat and it lets me pet it, the asthma attack is only about 5 minutes away. It's going to happen, it's not a possibility. It's a severe problem, I recognize that. But I remember as a younger child, I was reading, I think it was my mom's Time magazine or something, and they said, oh, 10 years until we have genetically engineered hypoallergenic cats. Well, that was when I was about 5. I'm 30 now. We still don't have them. I was lied to. I'm still waiting for that cat. So if you ever find someone who has created those, I will gladly welcome them into my Catnip Foundation as the result of our many, many trials so that we can all have cats.
Thank you so
One day.
much. We will look forward to the Catnip Foundation. All right. Do we have time for one more?
Actually, about 1 minute if anybody else wants to go, but
I can stop if you want.
do we have any other volunteers that want to go?
Anybody want Di to get up? Let's just have a nice summer and eat lots of gifts from the garden and grow flowers, get our hands in the dirt.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Speaking on that topic, by the way, all of the plants I have grown in the past couple of years, which I've tried my hand at a lot of different flowering plants, I have yet to grow daisies. They've been my favorite flower for like 20 years, and now I work for the Daisy Foundation. Still have not grown any, so maybe that'll be my next trial here. All right, so I'd like to invite our general evaluator, Jorge, back up here. The evaluation's underway.
Very good. We have had an interesting meeting today, despite the fact that we don't have as many people as we usually have. So let's invite Sunil to do the evaluation for Boston Carter.
First of all, thank you, Boston, for a beautiful speech. I think icebreaker is one of my favorite one, and I believe you nailed it because you grew up breaking ice.
Good one. Yeah, good one.
I think the main thing I like about your speech is your structure is very nice. You kind of talk about Minnesota and you talk about different seasons, and you relate your personal experience with each of those seasons and activity within that season. For example, you talk about ice fishing and then you showed us the picture of ice home, and you talk about how it filled with the beer. I would like to go and have some beer there. And I think the most part is I like your structure. And while listening your speech, I can kind of imagine myself being there. Like you show us a picture about lake, and I can imagine you've been there, and you talk about I was there and all those experiences. And thank you for saying that. And another thing I like about your visual ad, which is kind of really structured in a proper way. You talk about like this mosquitoes, and you show the picture, and you talk about ducks, and you actually put a sound on it, and that was kind of really cool about it. But I mean, one of the suggestions is I wouldn't use a visual ad in my first or second speech. I got that comment when I did on my second speech, so you did on your first, so probably get that a lot. But that was a wonderful, I mean, the visual ad, but one of my suggestions, I'll try to do more like non-visual first, and then you can use a visual later on. Another thing I noticed, you asked me like how if I start with the so. You didn't start a lot of your words with the so. One thing I noticed is you were kind of holding hand in the beginning, and maybe you were kind of nervous at the beginning. But afterwards, your flow was pretty nice. You connected pretty well with the audience, and your everything flowed properly. So only one suggestion that I wanted to give it to you is like maybe you can work more on your gestures. Overall, it's very nice speech, nice icebreaker. I think one of the best I have ever heard so far.
Yeah, I'd like to add the importance of graphics in a presentation. The Chinese have a saying that a picture is worth 10,000 words. We tend to believe that it's just 1,000, but the original Chinese proverb is 10,000 words. And you cannot achieve an excellent speech or an excellent result if you start with depressing pictures. I loved the pictures of the trees reflecting the lake. Absolutely stunning. So thank you. We're going to have evaluator number 2, Amy.
Hello, Toastmasters. This is Toastmaster, General Evaluator, especially Randy. I always love your speeches, and of course, you did not disappoint. You did a great job. I'll be honest, when you told me that your speech was 10 to 15 minutes from the Better Speaker series, I was a little bit concerned because these tend to get dry sometimes. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try and stay focused and pay really good attention. You made it really easy for me because you did such a good job of knowing your audience. You brought in a question that engaged us from the very beginning by asking us something. You told us why it was relevant to our lives. You shared stories of Toastmaster members. You talked about Steve's speech and Ellen's speech. You talked about your conversation with me and with Kathy. And so that just really engaged all of us, because of course when they're talking about something that we're a part of, then we want to know more. So great job researching your audience and really practicing what you were preaching. That was great. I also appreciated the humor, which, like you said, you didn't tell a joke, you really unveiled that joke within your speech, and it was very natural. And so that was wonderful. You gave great advice. My suggestion for you, which it was hard, I mean, there was the obvious, the conclusion was a little bit discombobulated, I guess I would say. And you didn't ask at the beginning, or let us know at the beginning to ask questions. So those obviously could be adjusted a little bit. But my biggest suggestion would be to move outside of the podium and the laptop and really get to know your audience and talk to us. And I think that maybe you were looking at your notes just a little bit. So I don't know how much you practiced, but practicing a little bit more, you could look at your PowerPoint that had pretty much the outline of your speech right there. That for me, I mean, I was sitting right there, so my head, I kind of had to go like this a little bit, but obviously you're very comfortable speaking and you're a great speaker, and I appreciated everything. That's going to be a speech that I put in my memory and try to reference several times over the next however many years I speak to people. So fantastic job, Randy. Thank you so much.
I'd like to add a little bit for Randy. And as we saw you from the other end of the room, you had your podium here and it was kind of twisted. You're going to be able to see it in the video. And I think it would have helped to have it lined up with you, and so that you could see your notes, and that would have been a lot easier. That's from the visual perspective. Moving on, we want to invite Kathy to give us our timers report, please.
Absolutely, thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Everybody was within their time, so everyone is eligible for voting. If you want specific times, I can give them, but basically everybody was within their time. They got on the table topics, and yeah, good job, everyone.
So it's time to vote for the best speaker, table topic, and evaluators. So please take a minute to do that.
Would anyone like to be reminded of what everybody did for table topics? Raji was jackfruit and cashews. Feedback was about the Zen garden and what makes it a garden connecting with nature. Amy, oh, I gave you the gnomes. Gnomes or no gnomes. Pat, what's up with the French garden? And Kate, catnip foundation.
Let's invite Vivek to give us the grammarians report, please.
I'll be keeping it short because I was so engaged into both the speeches that I completely forgot to note. But the word of the day was used 3 times. One time by Jorge, one time by Boston, and Kathy used it. Randy, I just noted some change of sentence in the middle, but that's just, I would say, the way we speak. Sometimes we have to do it. And same with Sunil as well. Is like, it's not typical, I would say, very big, but yeah, there was something which you change your thought in the middle. So that's all. Thank you.
That may have been his discombobulation.
Excellent. Bravo. Okay.
Thank you, Vivek. Now we have Pat giving us our sharp perspective of the ums and ahs.
Well, the grammarian and I share a problem, and that I was so engrossed with the speeches, it was really hard to listen for the ahs and ums. Kate, as Toastmaster at the beginning, you used an and Vivek, you said is like, but you didn't need the like. It wasn't, you were not comparing things. You threw in the like extemporaneously, and you mentioned the phrase over there multiple times. You said, you can sit over there, da 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 da. You could just say, you can sit. Because you didn't meet over there, you met right here. That makes any sense? Amy, I caught one, Jorge, you started a sentence at the very beginning.
Yeah.
So let's invite. Let's invite. Sunil, another like was thrown in there, and, oh, there you are. And you talked about visual add. You actually want to say visual aid. And Vivek, during your report just now, you changed your sentence multiple starts. That's it.
What about me? Thank you, Pat.
Apparently.
I didn't
clear-
catch anything for you.
Clear, man.
I know I said so once and I started with an and once.
I was-
I'll just confess it right now.
Self-reporting.
Buddy. You earth.
So in general, this was a nice meeting. I'm quite impressed with your visual aids in general. They were exceptional. Very few people have that kind of a command.
Yeah, I think it's a controversial thing when they say don't use visual aids in your first, couple, and I used them in my icebreaker. I just think it's I disagree with that as a comment. I'm with you. I love the visual aids.
Yes, so I believe they were very helpful.
Well, I have to say, as a depth psychologist, we are all about images and how the unconscious emerges as image. So without image, I can't do what I do.
Again,
So I have to do image, that's just how
it's the game of one word versus 10,000.
Yeah.
So, in general, a very good meeting, so I'd like to just pass the meeting back to Kate.
I don't know which clock is right. All right, so the fun part, I need ribbons, which would make this so much better.
Oh, they're in the drawer probably.
Oh, really?
I
In that accordion envelope that's like half sized. The upper drawer usually. And that brown thing right there. We had no sergeant at arms today, so so it happens.
No president.
Yeah. What's that? No
No
president.
Just an FYI, as of this morning, we do not currently have a Toastmaster listed for next week. So if you are feeling ambitious, need a role filled, really like emailing people to make sure that they check EasySpeak, definitely pick up that role. Or if you know someone who needs Toastmaster, reach out to them. It's anyway a really small group today. But of course, the eternal reminder, go on EasySpeak by tomorrow, accept your roles, deny them, let us know. If you can't take on your role and it's past Thursday, make sure you find coverage for that. Thank you so much. Makes it so much easier at the last minute for your general evaluator and your Toastmaster. All right, so the fun part, awards. All right, so for best speaker, oh yeah. And for best evaluator, and super awkward messy and puppet is me. And now I would like to bring Pat up. She has some announcements for us at the end here. Thank you so much.
For those of you who are on Pathways or should be on Pathways and you're a little confused, send your messages, your questions to Kathy. She will answer you as VP of Education. She is our Pathways person. And if you can't reach her, send them to me because I'm another Pathways person. With regard to next week, we are having elections. Are we all excited? Yes. And the people who will be elected will serve from July 1 of this year to June 30th of next year. I have a slate of officers. This is by no means closed. If you'd like to throw your hat in the ring, You could do it that day, or send it to me and I'll be happy to add your name to the list. For president, we have a nominee by the name of Randy Barber.
So please throw your hat in.
VP of Education, Kathy Mishahara, is happy to do it again.
Wow.
For VP of Membership, we'll have a runoff between Linda Whittlesey and Jorge. VP of Public Relations, Kate Annenson. Our treasurer, Austin Carter. Secretary, Amy Vetter. And Sergeant at Arms, Naga Venkata. So as past president, my job was to come up with a list of nominees, and I feel very comfortable that if this group is elected next week, that the club will be in very good hands going forward. So I want to thank all of you who are willing to step forward.
Yeah.
One more thing, don't forget, this weekend is the District 2 Conference. We have as the guest speaker, Darye, I don't remember his last name. Menenjaya? Menenjaya. Yeah, Menenjaya. And he won, if you don't have a chance, if you haven't seen it already, look at his YouTube video. It's, I See Something. So, here you go.
Oh, thank you. All right, so with no other announcements and no president currently, I hereby declare the meeting closed.